The latest developments tonight on a tragic shooting. A child is killed outside a Providence housing complex.
The 12-year-old victim was one of 4 people gunned down by gunfire on Hartford Avenue early Sunday morning. Now, this unthinkable homicide has city leaders calling for an end to the violence.
Eyewitness News reporter Nicole Estefan joins us now from Public Safety Headquarters with the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
The investigation is ongoing this evening. Meanwhile, both the city's mayor as well as the chief of police are reacting to the death of this 12-year-old girl. Eyewitness News on the scene on Hartford Avenue Sunday morning after a tragic shooting that left a 12-year-old girl dead and 3 women with gunshot wounds.
It's obviously something that shakes your core when you have a young child murdered, as we did this weekend.
As a memorial continues to grow at the scene, Mayor Angel Tavares tells us the violence is senseless, the death of Aynis Vargas unimaginable.
12-year-old girls should not lose their life to violence.
Chief Hugh Clement says police continue to investigate the incident, and he's confident that they will bring the shooter to justice.
It will not be an easy case to solve, but we're confident in the end we will identify the individual who pulled out the gun. This individual should be flushed out. He should be exposed. He is a coward to pull a gun in the middle of a family party.
Vargas's death marks the 8th homicide in the city of Providence this year. Despite efforts to curb violence, the mayor tells us for the Vargas family, for the city, it simply doesn't matter when a young life is lost. The chief of police telling us there are no suspects in custody, and he's asking anyone who knows anything to come forward. In Providence with the Mobile Newsroom.
For Aynis Vargas, victim of gun violence. 12-year-old Aynis Vargas. For some reason, we're not calling it a mass shooting. A shooter, wearing a black mask and camouflage pants, opened fire on a party on Hartford Ave, wounding 3 women and killing Aynis Vargas, a 12-year-old girl. Vargas was shot in the back and died on the scene. As of this writing, police are still searching for suspects. Aynis Vargas was always honest. Her father once gave her $5 to go on a field trip. It cost $3. So when she got home, Aynis gave him the change. She often said she felt she had to tell the truth in all situations. She dreamed of becoming a pharmacist, chef, or historian. But the 12-year-old told her parents that when she turned 15, she would get a part-time job at McDonald's or a restaurant. She completed 6th grade earlier this year at Garden City Elementary School in her hometown of Cranston. She wrote in her school's memory book that she wanted to grow up with her family and to be happy. Her father, Teo Vargas, told MSNBC. He described her as a simple child. She kept her bedroom neat and enjoyed his secret recipe pancakes. Aynis acted in homemade videos with her younger brother, often taking on a British accent. Her one obsession was with her natural curly hair, and she delighted in taking trips with her mother to the salon. Aynis was shot and killed by a masked gunman, who opened fire at an apartment complex, where she was celebrating a friend's high school graduation on June 15 in Providence. At least 3 women were injured. 2 people have been arrested and charged with murder and murder conspiracy. Providence police arrest 2 suspects in killing of 12-year-old girl last month. Hide caption. Brandon Castro is arraigned in district court, charged with murder in the June 15 killing of Aynis Vargas, 12, outside the Hartford Park housing project. 3 women were injured by gunfire. Castro and Ricardo Vasquez, 20, face life in prison if convicted. Providence police say the shootings, at a graduation party, were related to a gang feud. Detectives say they have cracked the murder of Aynis Vargas, 12, with the arrest of 2 men from the city's south side who they say traveled to the Hartford Park housing project, where one opened fire on a graduation celebration minutes before Father's Day. Brandon Castro, 21, of 71 Herschel Street, and Ricardo Vasquez, 20, of 1141 Elmwood Ave, were charged with murder conspiracy, and a host of other assault and weapons counts in the shooting of Vargas, an honor roll middle school student, and 3 women at the party outside a row of apartments at 256 Hartford Ave. The fatal shooting took place on June 15, a few minutes before midnight. The police said that Vargas and the women just happened to get caught in a long, simmering feud between warring gangs in Hartford Park on the west side and Harriet Street in South Providence. Castro and Vasquez run with the Harriet Street gang. The police said, if convicted, they face life in prison. Stephen M. Paré, Providence Public Safety Commissioner, and Police Chief Hugh T. Clements Jr. said the gang from Harriet Street, just off Prairie Avenue, is responsible for much of the gunplay in the city, and several gang members are suspects in other shootings. Asked at a news conference Wednesday whether the Harriet Street gang is responsible for other unsolved murders, Paré replied, "Perhaps." Deputy Police Chief Thomas F. Oates III said the Providence police assigned extra patrols to Harriet Street on Tuesday night following the arrests of Castro and Vasquez. "We put extra cars in that area," he said. "It's one of the hottest spots in the city." On the night of the murder, Leo Vargas, Aynis' uncle, said a lone masked gunman in a black t-shirt and camouflage pants fired several shots from a handgun, striking his niece and the women. Aynis was shot in the neck and died at the scene. The slaying led to an intensive investigation involving detectives, members of the anti-gang unit and the patrol division. The police expressed frustration that no witnesses came forward to provide tips. June was a particularly violent month in the city. 3 other people were shot and killed and 16 wounded by gunfire. It was the largest number of shooting victims for the first month of summer in at least 5 years. Vargas was the 8th of 10 murders so far this year in Providence. Paré said that the police will continue to appeal to members of the community to come forward and help the police solve murders and other violent crimes. "People should not be dying in the streets of America at age 12, he said. "It's frustrating when the young adults resort to retaliation and street justice."
The charges filed against Mr. Vasquez's murder of Aynis Vargas, charged by the Providence police for, among other things, for the murder of Aynis Vargas, the shooting of Vilma Teneo, the shooting of Elaine de Vargas, the shooting of Juvenile Cabrera, all occurring minutes before Father's Day, that being at approximately 11:56 on June 15th, 2013. Your Honor, in substance, this defendant, on that evening, in concert with Brandon Castro and others, found themselves together and found themselves in a car driving to the area of the Hartford Park housing project with the intent, among each other, to carry out an act of retaliatory violence. That as a result of their combined actions with a gun, the death of Aynis Vargas resulted and the shootings of Ms. Cabrera, Ms. de Vargas, and Ms. Teneo occurred.
Public defender's office held without bail.
Thank you, Your Honor.
State your name for the record, sir.
Brandon Castro,
Where's your date of birth?
April 6, 1992.
This defendant stands before you charged by the Providence police with the murder of Aynis Vargas, of the assault of Vilma Teneo, of the assault of Elaine de Vargas, of the assault of Juvenile Cabrera. Mr. Castro found himself in the company of Mr. Vasquez and others, and they got together and agreed to a plan to carry out a retaliatory act of violence. They did that in a car or a vehicle driven by Mr. Vasquez. They drove to the area of the Hartford Park housing complex, and together and in concert did their actions, armed with a gun, led to the murder of Aynis Vargas and the assault of Ms. Teneo.
Open. 3 more gang members arraigned in connection with murder of Aynis Vargas. Hide caption. Luis Gonzalez, left, and Angel Valerio, alleged members of the Harriet Street gang, are being held without bail.
Tonight, 3 more people arrested in connection with a shooting that killed a 12-year-old girl in Providence are being held without bail. Eyewitness News was in court as 2 of the suspects faced the judge for learning the girl was tragically caught in the crossfire of a street gang rivalry that police say is responsible for other acts of violence over the last few months. Eyewitness News reporter Todd Wallace is live in our studio now with the new details tonight.
Mike, authorities say the death of a 12-year-old girl is the result of a continuing feud between 2 gangs. Providence police say they've arrested the final 3 suspects in this tragic case, but not before other gang members were allegedly involved in another shooting that almost injured 2 officers. Providence police are confident everyone responsible for the tragic June 15th shooting death of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas has now been arrested.
We are profoundly sorry for their loss and can only hope these arrests bring some comfort to the families.
Police say Aynis was attending a graduation party when she was caught in the middle of an ongoing feud between two rival gangs in Providence.
This is a 12-year-old person that was taken innocently from a family.
Wednesday, police arrested 23-year-old Luis Gonzalez and 19-year-old Angel Valerio. Thursday, they faced a Superior Court judge for several charges, including murder. Another person who was a juvenile at the time of the shooting was also arrested and charged with murder.
We do have a juvenile who's been charged. I will state unequivocally we will be seeking a waiver to try that juvenile in adult court.
During this Thursday afternoon news conference, police said these gangs have continued their violent, indiscriminate ways.
Just a couple weeks ago, 2 of our Providence police officers were shot at on 2nd Street. This is the same group in our neighborhood shooting at one another.
3 people from that shooting have been arrested. The violence from these rival gangs has caused heartache and fear. Police say they will pay the consequences.
When you're apprehended involving a gun case, you may face the rest of your life in jail. And that's what these individuals are facing shortly.
And in July, Ricardo Vasquez and Brandon Castro were also charged in the shooting death of Aynis Vargas.
Providence. 3 more members of a South Providence gang are accused in a shooting that killed a 12-year-old girl and wounded 3 women at a high school graduation party in June. Luis Gonzalez, 23, Providence. 3 more members of a South Providence gang are accused in a shooting that killed a 12-year-old girl and wounded 3 women at a high school graduation party in June. Luis Gonzalez, 23, also known as Fat Boy, and Angel Valerio, 19, who calls himself Young Sif, are being held without bail on 10 felony counts in connection with the murder of Aynis Vargas and the triple shooting at the Hartford Park housing projects. An 18-year-old Providence man, who was 17 at the time of the shootings, was also arraigned Thursday at family court on the same charges and was remanded to the training school. Attorney General Peter Gilmartin said he will seek to have the younger man tried as an adult. A Providence County grand jury indicted the 3 men on Wednesday, as well as 2 other alleged conspirators who were arrested in July. Brandon Castro, 21, accused of being the shooter, and Ricardo Vasquez, 20, who allegedly drove his minivan with the gang members to the projects the night of the shootings, remain held without bail at the adult correctional institutions. September 27, 2013. This makes 5 young men, all alleged members of the Harriet Street Gang, or H Block, who've been charged in the deadly shooting. All face the possibility of life in prison. Police Chief Hugh Clements Jr. said Thursday that he was satisfied they'd found all the people involved in the fatal shooting. He offered condolences to Aynis' family. "We are profoundly sorry for their loss, and we hope the arrests will bring some comfort," Clements said. A long, simmering feud between 2 neighborhood gangs is blamed for the shooting of innocents at the party late on June 15, just a few minutes before Father's Day. The police alleged that Harriet Street was seeking revenge on the Hartford Soldiers because someone busted a window in Vasquez's minivan. A little vandalism, the police say, led to suffering and murder. The little girl and her family were in the Hartford projects that night, outside a row of apartments at a friend's party. A masked gunman walked up to the gathering and shot Aynis to death in front of her family. He also shot and wounded Vilma Tineo, 44, Elaine de Vargas, 23, and Eugelin Cabrera Martinez, 33. The police have said that the victims were just in the wrong place at the wrong time on a night when strangers wanted to make the neighborhood pay. Mayor Angel Taveras praised the detectives and Special Assistant Attorney General James Baum for their dogged investigation. "The senseless death of Aynis Vargas touched the soul of our city," Taveras said. "Harriet Street and the Hartford Soldiers have waged a long war throughout the city that has left people wounded or dead." Only a week ago, these same 3 Harriet Street members ducked bullets when 2 Hartford Soldiers allegedly shot at them and 2 police officers. The police swiftly caught the 2 men thought to be the shooters, as well as the getaway driver. All members of the Hartford Soldiers.
Now we're working developing news out of Providence. 2 men are under arrest right now, and police are searching for a 3rd suspect. The 3 men are accused of shooting at a pair of officers questioning members of a gang late last night. New at 6, Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly is talking to neighbors emotional over their violence in the neighborhood. He joins us now live in the capital city.
What the Providence police are calling a wild incident last night led to assault charges against 2 people accused of brazenly shooting at the police. A violent dispute late last night between what the Providence police are calling rival gangs included the police.
While involved in a conversation with some local gang members, they were fired upon.
It started just before midnight here on Sackett Street, involving what the police say are members of two rival gangs. Members of one gang fired at members of the other who happened to be talking to the police at the time. Gunshots hit one gang member in the legs. No gunshots hit the police. As members of one gang tried to make their getaway, the police say their vehicle struck police cruisers. Now, two men the police say are gang members are charged with assault with a dangerous weapon. 23-year-old Vicente Rodriguez and 20-year-old James Lawrence.
Have our doors closed and just mind our own business.
Neighbors who live near Sackett Street are on edge.
Yeah, I'm scared for my kids and myself. Like I said, I got shot. My brother got killed last year. You know what I mean? It's a lot. You know what I mean? And right now, I don't want to talk because.
How would you describe the general neighborhood around here, the safety level?
No more. It's gonna bother me. My brother. You know what I mean? So I don't. Please.
Her emotions, a reminder that the impact of violence stays with people. Live with the mobile newsroom, Sean Daly, Eyewitness News.
The police returned Wednesday for the Harriet Street men wanted for murder. Gonzalez was arrested on Slater Street in Pawtucket. Valerio and the young teen were on Sackett Street in Providence, about a block from last week's shooting. Valerio and Gonzalez were shackled together Thursday as they pleaded not guilty before Superior Court Judge Robert Krause. Aynis Vargas' family sat together watching the proceedings, while Gonzalez's mother and other relatives remained at the back of the courtroom, tearfully leaning on each other. Both families declined to speak to reporters. Providence Public Safety Commissioner Stephen M. Paré declined to answer questions about how these three men were involved, or what led the police to suspect them. In the beginning, no one came forward to help the police crack the case. Surveillance cameras in Hartford Park helped identify Vasquez's distinctive-looking minivan in the area. Vasquez's cell phone records revealed text messages between him and his girlfriend before and after the shooting. According to an affidavit supporting an arrest warrant, expletive went sour bay. "We need to talk," he texted after the shooting. Expletive went down and there were 3 hit and 1 down, for good. This help led to the arrests of Vasquez and Castro in July. Eventually, some people did cooperate in the investigation, Paré said, but there was still fear. The police and attorney general pledged to go after gangs in the city. "If you are a gang member and carry a firearm, beware," Paré said. "We will arrest you, we will prosecute you, and we will put you in jail for a long time." 5 indicted for killing of former Cranston girl Aynis Vargas, who was shot and killed on June 15, attended Quidnesset Elementary School. The Providence County Grand Jury issued a secret indictment charging Brandon Castro, Luis Gonzalez, Angel Valerio, and Ricardo Vasquez with murder and other charges for the June 15 shooting in Providence that left 12-year-old Aynis Vargas dead and injured 3 others. Vargas moved with her family to Cranston last year, where she was a 6th grader at Garden City Elementary School. The grand jury indicted the 4 defendants on 1 count of murder, 2 counts of conspiracy, 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon, and 4 counts of discharging a firearm while committing a crime of violence. A 5th individual, who was 17 at the time of the incident, was arrested Wednesday, charged with 1 count of murder, 2 counts of conspiracy, 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon and 4 counts of discharging a firearm while committing a crime of violence. According to police reports, on June 15, Castro, Gonzalez, Valerio, Vasquez, along with the Juvenile co-conspirator, opened fire at a graduation party in the Hartford Park neighborhood of Providence, where bullets struck and killed Aynis Vargas and injured Vilma Tineo, Elaine de Vargas, and Eugelin Cabrera. Providence police arrested Castro and Vasquez in July for their involvement in the incident. The investigation continued, leading to the subsequent indictment and arrest of Gonzalez and Valerio and the arrest of the Juvenile co-conspirator. The Providence police conducted the investigation. Gonzalez and Valerio were arraigned in Providence County Superior Court Thursday before Superior Court Justice Robert D. Krause. Both were held without bail. The Juvenile co-conspirator was presented before a family court judge this morning and was remanded to the Rhode Island Training School. 1 suspect has pleaded guilty to the June 15 murder of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas. Ricardo Vasquez, 20, was sentenced to life in prison on Friday. He pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder, 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon, a firearm, and 3 counts of conspiracy to commit assault with a dangerous weapon. Brandon Castro, 21, was also charged and is scheduled to be arraigned next Friday, October 4th. 3 new men were also arraigned yesterday in connection to the case. Angel Valerio, also known as Young Sif, Luis Gonzalez, also known as Fat Boy, and an unidentified juvenile were secretly indicted on 10 counts, including felony assault with a dangerous weapon, conspiracy, discharging a firearm in a crime of violence, and murder. Valerio and Gonzalez were formally charged in Superior Court, and the juvenile was arraigned in Family Court and is currently being held at the Rhode Island Training School.
Now we are tracking new developments in a tragic child murder investigation.
One day after Providence police announced the arrests of 3 more suspects in the June shooting death of a 12-year-old Providence girl, another suspect has pleaded guilty in connection with her murder.
It is a story that was first breaking on Eyewitness News at noon. Aynis Vargas was killed and 3 women injured after shots were fired into a crowd at a graduation party at the Hartford Park housing development in June.
This morning, 20-year-old Ricardo Vasquez pleaded guilty to charges and was sentenced to life in prison. Now, he is one of 5 people charged in connection with the shooting, which police have said was gang-related. Eyewitness News reporter Susan Campbell joins us live from the Providence Mobile Newsroom with the new developments.
Aynis Vargas's parents chose not to speak in court today, but they did ask the prosecutor to read their messages to the judge. Those messages spoke volumes of their heartbreak and loss.
The defendant is remanded to custody at this time.
A guilty plea and a life sentence. Today, Ricardo Vasquez pled guilty to 6 charges, including murder, for his role in the shooting death of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas. In exchange, the state dropped 4 other charges.
Your Honor, Aynis's father wished to express, but was at a loss of words, but wanted me to tell you simply that this is the biggest loss of their entire life. That they know they have to go forward, but it will affect the family forever.
Police say Aynis was an innocent victim caught in the middle of an ongoing feud between rival gangs. 4 others are still facing murder charges in connection with the case. Brandon Castro was arrested in July. Luis Gonzalez, Angel Valerio, and a juvenile were arraigned yesterday. Now we've learned investigators believe Brandon Castro fired the fatal shot.
He crossed the Hartford Avenue and fired into the group of people standing at 256 Hartford Avenue, killing Aynis Vargas and wounding Vilma Teneo, Elaine de Vargas, and Yugelin Cabrera.
As Target 12 investigators first reported in July, Vasquez, according to an affidavit, sent several text messages to his girlfriend before and after the shooting. 1 red expletive went down, and there were 3 hit and 1 down for good. Police say they have still not found the murder weapon. Coming up new at 6, people who live near the murder scene react to today's sentencing. Live with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Susan Campbell, Eyewitness News.
And we're working new developments in a tragic child murder investigation. One of 4 men charged in the shooting death of a 12-year-old girl in Providence appeared in court late this morning. Brandon Castro was charged in the June 15th shooting at the Hartford Park housing development. Aynis Vargas was killed and 3 women were injured after shots were fired into a crowd at a graduation party. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly is live outside Superior Court now in Providence with the latest details. Sean?
Danielle, on a cool day in the fall, what happened on a hot day in the summer was back on the docket this morning here at Superior Court in Providence. Violence struck in the shape of a murder and a triple shooting in the Hartford Park housing project at a high school graduation party in Providence late on June 15th, only minutes away from Father's Day. 5 people have since been arrested, all of them, the police say, members of a South Providence gang involved in an ongoing feud with a rival gang. Mayor Angel Tavares said what that rivalry produced, quote, touched the soul of our city. By that he meant the heartbreaking murder of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas and the wounding of 3 women whose ages are 23, 33, and 44. The police say the shooter and his 4 fellow gang members were out for revenge because someone in the rival gang busted one of their car windows. They say all 4 victims were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. Last week, one of the 5 accused, 20-year-old Ricardo Vasquez, pleaded guilty to his role in the shooting. He was sentenced to life in prison. Today, the man the police say was the actual shooter, 21-year-old Brandon Castro, was arraigned after a grand jury indicted him last week. Outside the courthouse afterwards, the little girl's father told me he's grateful for this indictment. He said, quote, "We're satisfied. This is progress." Live at Superior Court with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Sean Dale.
Fifth alleged member of Harriet Street gang charged in slaying of Aynis Vargas, 12. Hide caption. Luis D. Gonzalez faces 10 charges in the slaying of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas, by Gregory Smith. Journal staff writer posted October 23, 2013 at 9:46 p.m. Providence, muttering a curse. A youth accused in the shooting death of a 12-year-old girl and the wounding of 3 women at a house party was arraigned in district court Wednesday. Providence, muttering a curse. A youth accused in the shooting death of a 12-year-old girl and the wounding of 3 women at a house party was arraigned in district court Wednesday. Luis D. Gonzalez, 18, of 5 Linwood Street, Providence. An alleged member of the Harriet Street gang, or H Block, named for a street in South Providence, was formally charged in the slaying of Aynis Vargas, 12, when Magistrate Joseph P. Polito Jr. announced during the arraignment, no bail. Gonzalez cursed and his lawyer appeared to urge him to be quiet. Polito seemed not to hear the curse word and did not react. Gonzalez, whose name had not been disclosed until Wednesday because he was a juvenile at the time of the shootings on June 15, was identified by the Attorney General's office as the brother of another suspect in the case, Luis Fatboy Gonzalez, 23, of 645 Douglas Ave, Providence. 13 D. Gonzalez was arraigned on 10 charges, murder, 2 counts of conspiracy, 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon and 4 counts of discharging a firearm in a crime of violence. First-degree murder carries a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment. If he is convicted of discharging a firearm in a crime of violence, with Aynis' death resulting, he would receive a mandatory life sentence on that count, too, that would run consecutively to the first life term. Life imprisonment can be a misnomer in Rhode Island. However, because a convict can earn a release, Gonzalez is not accused of having fired the handgun that killed Aynis, but is an alleged participant in the crime. He can be held as responsible as the person who did. Asked for details of his alleged participation, the Attorney General's office declined comment. Gonzalez is one of 5 alleged members of H Block who have been charged. Brandon Castro, 21, of 49 Steuben Street, Providence, also known as Pleas, and Joshua Morales, the accused shooter. One of the 5 already has confessed in a plea bargain with the Attorney General. Ricardo Vasquez, 20, of 1141 Elmwood Ave, Providence, last month accepted a life sentence in prison. The fatal shooting, Special Assistant Attorney General James Baum said at Vasquez's sentencing, is attributed to a broken window in Vasquez's minivan. The H Block members blame the Hartford Soldiers, a gang based in the Hartford Park housing project. Baum said the 5 defendants, in the minivan, went out for revenge that night, June 15, and saw the house party at 256 Hartford Ave. Although there has been no suggestion that anyone at the party was responsible for the vandalism, the accused allegedly decided to take their revenge there. Vasquez and Castro got out, walked up to the gathering, and Castro fired. According to the allegations, D. Gonzalez initially was charged in family court because he was 17 years old, a juvenile at the time of the shootings. He turned 18 since then, and he was waived out of family court and into adult court. A plea to a capital crime is not handled in district court, so no plea was entered on the record for Gonzalez. Magistrate Polito set November 7 for a bail hearing and said the matter would be referred to a grand jury for indictment. The other 4 defendants were indicted, but D. Gonzalez was not because he was the subject of a different prosecutorial track in family court at first. As a shackled Gonzalez was led out of the courtroom at the Garrahy Judicial Complex, a young man in the gallery said something to him and Gonzalez began to respond. A sheriff admonished Gonzalez to keep quiet and the young man was told to leave.
New developments in a tragic murder investigation. The 5th suspect in the deadly shooting of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas appeared in court today. He was a juvenile when the crime was committed, but is being tried as an adult accused of killing a child. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly joins us now live outside Providence District Court.
Mike, for years, juveniles accused of murder and other serious crimes were dealt with as juveniles, but now some juveniles can be dealt with as adults, and tonight, here's what that means. It was less than an hour before Father's Day here in the Hartford Park housing project in Providence. The police say 5 members of a gang came here bent on revenge against a rival gang. And yet, tragically, the victims of their rage weren't even their rivals, but rather 4 innocent people caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. In a drive-by shooting during a high school graduation party, 12-year-old Aynis Vargas was killed in an instant. Today, 18-year-old Luis Didi Gonzalez, who was 17 at the time of the shooting, was arraigned as an adult on 1 count of murder and assorted other charges. The police say Didi Gonzalez and his 4 fellow gang members set out for revenge because someone in the rival gang busted a car window worth all of about $250. The police say the heat is on.
We're going to continue to throw all our resources at these gangs that continuously shoot, sometimes randomly, at innocent people.
By any measure, murder is an adult crime, and tonight, a man who was a juvenile when this murder happened no longer is being treated with kid gloves. Live at District Court in Providence with the Mobile Newsroom, Sean.
Teen pleads guilty to shooting. Murder charge dropped for testifying in murder of Aynis Vargas, 12. By Amanda Milkovitz, Journal staff writer. Follow. Posted March 17, 2014 at 3:12 p.m. Providence, RI, the youngest of 5 gang members, accused in a shooting that killed a 12-year-old girl and wounded 3 women at a high school graduation party, has pleaded guilty to some of the charges. Providence, RI, the youngest of 5 gang members, accused in a shooting that killed a 12-year-old girl and wounded 3 women at a high school graduation party, has pleaded guilty to some of the charges. Luis Didi Gonzalez, 18, pleaded guilty Monday afternoon to 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon and conspiracy. Gonzalez has agreed to testify in a murder trial in May against 3 other suspects, according to his plea agreement. So charges of murder and discharging a firearm were dropped. His role in the fatal shooting was limited, according to the Attorney General's office. Gonzalez just had his stick because he thought they were going to fight rival gang members, and he urged the others to leave when they didn't see their targets, Assistant Attorney General James Baum said in Superior Court Monday. Gonzalez will be testifying against his older brother, also named Luis Gonzalez and nicknamed Fat Boy, as well as the alleged gunman Brandon Blaze Castro, and another gang member accused as an accomplice, Angel Youngsif Valerio. Another defendant, Ricardo Vasquez, 21, pleaded guilty in September and was sentenced to life in prison. Didi Gonzalez was just 17 on the night of the fatal shooting last summer. During the plea before Superior Court Robert D. Krause, Baum described how the evening unfolded. The parents of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas sat silently in court and listened. Gonzalez and the other 4 men are part of the Harriet Street gang, known as H Block, in the city's south side. That gang has been warring for years with the Hartford Soldiers gang. Gang member, 19, admits role in shooting that killed 12-year-old in Providence. Hide caption Angel Valerio, 19, pleads guilty on charges he was involved in a shooting that killed Aynis Vargas, 12, last year. His attorney William Demetrius left. Free to Squires, by Katie Mulvaney, posted APR 10, 2014 at 12:06 p.m. Providence, RI. A 19-year-old gang member faces up to 13 years to serve in prison after pleading guilty Thursday to his part in the murder of a 12-year-old girl and the shooting of 3 women at an outdoor graduation party in Hartford Park. Aynis Vargas was 12 when she was killed at a graduation party in Providence in June. Bob Thayer, Providence, RI. A 19-year-old gang member faces up to 13 years to serve in prison after pleading guilty Thursday to his part in the murder of a 12-year-old girl and the shooting of 3 women at an outdoor graduation party in Hartford Park. Angel Youngsif Valerio admitted to 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon and conspiracy before Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause. Murder, conspiracy, and firearms charges against the Harriet Street gang, or H Block, member were dropped under a plea agreement reached with prosecutors. Under the deal, Valerio is not required to testify against the other gang members implicated in the slaying of 6th grader Aynis Vargas on June 15, 2013. Aynis's father observed the proceedings from the back of the courtroom. Wearing navy blue prison garb and sporting an afro, Valerio listened as Assistant Attorney General James Baum recounted the teenager's role in the crime. Valerio was hanging out with friends and other H block members at Harriet and Sales Streets when he was nearly hit by a car they believed was driven by a Hartford gang member, Baum said. Fellow H Block member Ricardo Vasquez, 20, tried to pursue the car, only to return saying a Hartford member smashed the window of his van as he was stopped in traffic. Valerio and 4 others got into the van and drove to the Hartford Park housing projects with a plastic garbage bag over the window. They were seeking to retaliate for the broken window and to avenge the death of a friend shot to death a year earlier, Baum said. The killing of 19-year-old Omar Polanco on Harriet Street in September 2012 remains unsolved. Valerio plotted with Vasquez, Luis Didi Gonzalez and his older brother, Luis Fatboy Gonzalez, and the alleged gunman Brandon Blaze Castro to assault any Hartford gang members they encountered, Baum said. It's then that Castro exited the van and approached 256 Hartford Ave, firing a .22 caliber handgun into a group, shooting Aynis in the neck and wounding Vilma Tineo, Elaine de Vargas, and Eugelin Cabrera Martinez, Baum said. Do you agree with what he has told you? Krause asked Valerio. Yes, Your Honor, said Valerio, who was represented by William C. Dimitri. 2 other gang members previously admitted to their participation in the shooting. Vasquez, then 20, pleaded guilty in September to the murder, triple shooting, and conspiracy and was sentenced to life in prison. The youngest of the defendants, Luis Didi Gonzalez, 18, pleaded guilty last month to 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon and conspiracy. He has agreed to testify against 3 other suspects, including one of his brothers, as part of the plea agreement. Hello, Reed. Providence gang member sentenced to life in prison for murder of Aynis Vargas, 12. Hide caption Brandon Castro, the alleged gunman in Aynis Vargas killing, is arraigned July 17 in district court. And Brandon Blaze Castro didn't appear too fazed Friday about spending the rest of his life in prison for killing Aynis Vargas and shooting 3 other women at a graduation party at the Hartford Park housing project last spring, Providence, RI. Gang member Brandon Blaze Castro didn't appear too fazed Friday about spending the rest of his life in prison for killing 12-year-old Aynis Vargas and shooting 3 other women at a graduation party outside an apartment at the Hartford Park housing project last spring. Castro, who turned 22 3 weeks ago, slumped in his seat at the defense table and exhibited no emotion during the 30-minute proceeding before Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause. He admitted firing the fatal shot at the 6th-grade student and wounding the other women, all of whom he had never met. He declined to address the court or apologize to the Vargas family, including T.M.O. Vargas, the father of the murdered girl. And he never challenged any of the details recited by James Baum, an assistant attorney general, leading up to or during the night of June 15, when he opened fire on the girl and the women with a .22 caliber handgun. A large, bearish man with braided hair and gang tattoos creeping outside his right shirt sleeve to his hand, Castro said impassively with heavy chains linking his lower legs. 5 sheriffs crowded the 5th-floor courtroom, related.
But first, a child killer is sentenced after pleading guilty to pulling the trigger of the gun that claimed the life of a 12-year-old girl.
Aynis Vargas was gunned down at a graduation party in Providence last summer by a group of suspected gang members. Today's sentencing brought some closure to the victim's family.
Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly was in court today. He joins us with the emotional statements from the victim's family.
Mike and Shannon, this is one of the most cruel murders people here at Superior Court in Providence can remember. A young girl, 12 years old, gunned down at a birthday party last summer. It was less than an hour before Father's Day here in the Hartford Park housing project in Providence. The police say 5 members of a gang came here bent on revenge against a rival gang. And yet, the police say the victims of their rage weren't even their rivals, but rather 4 innocent people in the wrong place at the wrong time. 12-year-old Aynis Vargas was killed and 3 grown women were injured in a drive-by shooting during a high school graduation party.
At this time, then, Mr. Castro, do you plead guilty or not guilty to these charges?
Today, the accused shooter, 22-year-old Brandon Castro, pleaded guilty to pulling the trigger that killed Aynis Vargas. Judge Robert Krause sentenced him to serve 2 consecutive life prison terms plus 50 years. A prosecutor read a statement written by Aynis Vargas's father that paints a picture of a happy young girl who just wanted to stay happy.
Mr. Vargas says, "We will always remember our daughter Aynis as a happy child. She was full of life and love. As parents, we never thought her life would be so short. She wrote in her school's memory book that she wanted to grow up with her family and to be happy.
Today's guilty plea means now that 4 out of the 5 defendants in this case have pleaded guilty. Coming up new at 6, the survivors of this shooting on how their forever changed as well. Live at Superior Court with the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
Now we have an update on one of the 5 suspects charged with the murder of a 12-year-old girl. Lawyers made their opening statements this afternoon in the trial for Luis Fatboy Gonzalez. The 23-year-old is facing a long list of charges in connection with the shooting death of Aynis Vargas, who was shot outside a graduation party in Providence last June. He is the only suspect whose case is going to trial. The 4 other suspects have all pleaded guilty.
Witness collapses describing man who shot her and murdered 12-year-old girl. Hide caption: shooting victim Vilma Tineo, who was shot in the head, cries as she describes the scene during Luis Fatboy Gonzalez's trial in the murder of killing 12-year-old Aynis Vargas. Providence, RI. The state's first witness in the trial of Luis Fatboy Gonzalez collapsed into quivering hyperventilation and tears Thursday as she began to describe the man who shot her and killed a 12-year-old girl at the surprise graduation. Providence, RI. The state's first witness in the trial of Luis Fatboy Gonzalez collapsed into quivering hyperventilation and tears Thursday as she began to describe the man who shot her and killed a 12-year-old girl at the surprise graduation party she threw for her daughter last June. I am never going to forget his eyes. I have them in my head, Vilma Tineo said through a Spanish-language interpreter. Seconds later, Tineo said she could not continue after being asked by Assistant Attorney General Stacey Vironi about identifying the shooter. Harriet Street, or H Block, gang member Brandon Blaze Castro has admitted to firing the gun that killed 6th grader Aynis Vargas and wounded Tineo and 2 other party-goers. Gonzalez, who wiped his eyes during portions of Tineo's testimony, is on trial for allegedly conspiring with Castro and 3 other H Block gang members to murder Vargas and wound Tineo and 2 others. The heavy-set Gonzalez, who sits on a bench, hung his head during much of Tineo's testimony. TMO Vargas, Aynis's father, asked that rescue crews be called as Tineo gasped for breath. Ricardo Vasquez testifies against alleged co-conspirators in murder of Aynis Vargas.
Now at 5, more testimony today in the murder trial of a city gang member. Luis Fatboy Gonzalez is accused of helping to plan and carry out a shooting that killed a 12-year-old Providence girl. And today in court, an admitted accomplice took the stand once again. It's our top local story at 5. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly is live outside Providence Superior Court with the very latest.
Shannon, a gang member admitted lying to the police last year shortly after a 6th grade girl was gunned down in rival gang warfare.
Yes, sorry, yeah.
23-year-old Luis Fatboy Gonzalez is one of 5 gang members implicated in unconscionable crimes, shooting and killing 12-year-old Aynis Vargas and shooting and injuring 3 grown women. The other 4 gang members have all pleaded guilty. All 4 victims were at a graduation party last June in the Hartford Park housing development when prosecutors say 5 members of a rival gang showed up bent on revenge for a broken car window. As if that weren't insignificant enough, prosecutors say the gang didn't even attack members of their rival gang. Instead, they shot 4 innocent victims celebrating a teenager's graduation. Today, the only one of the 5 members of the gang who chose to go to trial sat quietly as one of his 4 fellow gang members testified for the prosecution in exchange for leniency. Ricardo Vasquez told the jury that at first he lied about where he was the night of the murder.
What did you tell him?
I told him that I was home all night and my car got stolen out of my driveway.
Did you tell him that you had any involvement in the events of Hartford Park?
No.
So it was a lie?
Yes.
Cross-examination, Ricardo Vasquez conceded he's cooperating with prosecutors now with the hope of avoiding dying in prison. That's new at 6.
Providence, RI. In less than 24 hours, Providence police brought Ricardo Vasquez in for questioning about the van he had reported stolen shortly after someone opened fire on a graduation party. Providence, RI. In less than 24 hours, Providence police brought Ricardo Vasquez in for questioning about the van he had reported stolen shortly after someone opened fire on a graduation party at the Hartford Park project, killing a 12-year-old 8-year-old girl and wounding 3 others. A month later, the police would arrest Vasquez along with the alleged gunman, his close friend and fellow Harriet Street gang member Brandon Blaze Castro, for the murder of 6th grader Aynis Vargas. The police presented Vasquez with photos showing his van near Hartford Park at the time of the shooting and Castro approaching the party, as well as damaging text messages Vasquez had sent a friend about the shootings. Vasquez, 21, returned Friday for his second day on the stand in the trial of Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez, a fellow gang member accused of plotting with Vasquez, Castro, and 2 others to fire into the party last June 15 as retribution for the shooting death of a friend they believe was killed by the rival Hartford Soldiers gang. Gonzalez is charged with conspiracy in the murder of Vargas and wounding of 3 women. He also faces firearms charges. Vasquez is serving life at the adult correctional institutions after admitting his role in the attack and agreeing to testify against his alleged co-conspirators. In the courtroom, Vasquez and the heavyset Gonzalez looked at each other without expression. Gonzalez listened attentively as Vasquez spoke, sometimes taking notes or using a marker to highlight documents. Vasquez acknowledged under questioning by Gonzalez's lawyer, Robert B. Mann, he had lied to the police about his van being stolen. Mann prodded Vasquez about the evolving stories he told the police leading up to him entering a cooperation agreement with state prosecutors in September 2013. Mann produced a report in which Vasquez said it was Castro, not Gonzalez, who directed him where to park the night of the shooting. That account differed from Vasquez's earlier testimony. Vasquez acknowledged too that he didn't initially tell the police that Gonzalez's brother, Luis D.D. Gonzalez, and Angel Youngsif Valerio, also Harriet Street members, were with them that night. I threw the weight on me, and Brandon Vasquez said. He held himself, as the driver, and Castro, the shooter, more responsible, but later reconsidered that position. When I sat back and thought about it, we was all responsible, he said. He also feared retribution if he implicated Gonzalez and his brother, Vasquez said in response to a question by Assistant Attorney General James Baum. I knew if I gave everybody up there would be a higher chance of retaliation against my girl because I was in jail, he said. He later told the police that Didi had provided Castro with the dark hoodie and hat he wore during the attack. Valerio, he said, gave Castro a white-collared shirt with red stripes to hide his face during the shooting. Mann questioned Vasquez about the cooperation agreement he reached with the state. He was sentenced to life in prison after pleading guilty to first-degree murder plus 20 years for 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon, and 10 years for 2 counts of conspiracy. The sentences run concurrently. Firearms charges that carried a mandatory life sentence plus possibly decades more time behind bars were dismissed in exchange for his cooperation. You were worried about it, Mann said of the double life sentences he had faced. Of course, I was. It was my life, Vasquez said. Vasquez, who was convicted of stealing cars, selling marijuana, and assault as a juvenile, insisted it was an agreement more than a deal. It really wasn't a deal if you look at it, said Vasquez, occasionally rubbing his goatee. Why not? Mann asked. 'Cause it's life. I wake up every day wondering if I'll die in jail, Vasquez said, asked if he expected his testimony against Gonzalez to help him get parole in 20 years. Vasquez said, maybe it will make a difference, maybe it won't. He said he had asked the Attorney General's office to write a letter on his behalf. At the time, he also acknowledged that prosecutors had allowed him to visit with his girlfriend several times at the courthouse. His daughter, he said, played a role in his cooperation. I asked myself what if it was my daughter it happened to. I asked myself what would I want to happen. I would want justice. He said he had written a letter to the Vargas family apologizing for his crimes. Hello. Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez's brother tells story of events leading to the shooting death of Aynis Vargas. Hide caption. Luis D.D. Gonzalez is sworn in at his brother Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez's murder conspiracy trial Thursday in Superior Court before Judge Robert D.
Me, my brother, Angel, Blaze, and Ricardo. Okay. And where did you sit? I sat in the middle, on the right side, near the door. Okay. And what was being said between the 5 of you in that van as you were driving around Broad Street? What was being said is that if we was to see them, we was going to hop out and start fighting them. Okay. So when you say see them, was it understood, did you understand it to be the car that was connected to the window? Yes. Hartford. You see Hartford, right? Yes. Fight. So at that time when you were driving around, you and the other members of that van, including this defendant, wanted to retaliate against Hartford, right? Objection.
What did you and the other members of that band want to do to Hartford?
Objection. Objection. Did I heard first? Yeah.
I'll hear you. Answer the question.
Who was gonna fight?
Did you ever find them on the south side, around Broad Street?
No, we didn't see them, so we
You
said.
didn't see them, I mean
Yeah,
Hartford?
yeah. So we was gonna go around. Richie said, "Let's go around one more time and see if we see them."
Okay. Well, did you see anything when you were right there?
Oh yes, there was a party going on.
Okay. And where did you see the party?
On my left-hand side.
On the left-hand side. Okay. Can you describe that party?
Females and kids.
And what if anything, did you say anything when you saw that?
Yes.
What did you say?
I said, none of them's here, so let's just leave.
And did anyone listen to you? Anyone respond to you?
Yes.
Okay, who?
My brother, he said, don't do nothing to no little kids.
Okay. And what happened after that?
We went around one more time to see if we had seen him, and then that's when we ended up parking at Berry Road.
Okay. Well, after you last heard your brother, you say your brother said, after you last heard that, did anybody else say anything in the van?
Yes, Blaze.
Blaze?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let me start by saying, what did Blaze say?
He said they killed Oma. They didn't care about Oma.
Okay. And did your brother say anything right after that?
Yes.
What did he say?
He said, let's just go pop.
When your brother said, if you're going to do something, do it right, what did Brandon Castro do?
Brandon Castro was already, he already, before that, he already was starting to put the mask and all that over his face.
So he was putting a mask over his face. What else did he do?
He put a hoodie on over his face too. But that was before my brother said that.
Okay. So it's clear that Brandon Castro was getting ready to do something, correct?
Yes.
Do something pretty bad, right?
Yes.
What was it clear Brandon Castro was going to do?
Sure.
I'll permit that. If there's an objection, please wait until I fill it up before you answer.
All right.
Ask the question again.
What was it clear Brandon Castro was going to do?
Shoot him.
The answer stands.
Providence, RI. Harriet Street gang members pulled posts from a porch to arm themselves against rivals they believed had smashed a window in a member's minivan the afternoon of June 15. 5 Harriet Street, Providence, RI. Harriet Street gang members pulled posts from a porch to arm themselves against rivals they believed had smashed a window in a member's minivan the afternoon of June 15. 5 Harriet Street, or H Block. Members then headed to Broad Street in search of Hartford Soldiers, with whom their gang had feuded for years. They didn't spot any. We was just going to see if we seen them. We was gonna fight. Harriet Street, or H Block. Member Luis Didi Gonzalez, 18, told jurors Thursday in Superior Court at the murder conspiracy trial of his older brother, Luis Fatboy Gonzalez, as they passed the police. Brandon Blaze Castro warned, "Don't be hot," Didi Gonzalez said. "I wasn't really sure what he meant by that." Castro told them he had a gun. The group smoked marijuana and drank Hennessy as they made their way to the Hartford Park housing project and circled the area, he said. Gonzalez saw a party with women and children. "I said none of them's here, so let's just leave," Gonzalez said. Luis Fatboy Gonzalez, sitting in the front passenger seat, chimed in, "Don't do nothing to the little kids," Didi Gonzalez told the jurors. Castro responded, "They killed Omar. They didn't care about Omar," Gonzalez said. Castro was referring to the 2012 shooting death of H Block associate Omar Polanco. His brother directed the minivan's driver, Ricardo Vasquez, to a parking lot across the street from the party, Gonzalez said. Fat Boy told Castro, "If you're going to do something, do it right." As Castro got out of the van and approached the party, Gonzalez said. They heard 4 or 5 gunshots. Castro returned and told them, "I think I hit something. Let's leave," Gonzalez said. Castro had fired into a graduation party, killing 6th grader Aynis Vargas and wounding 3 women. He has admitted being the triggerman. Prosecutors say Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez, 23, plotted with 4 other H-Block members, including Didi, to open fire on the party in retaliation for Polanco's death. Authorities say the group believed Polanco had been killed by the Hartford Soldiers. The younger Gonzalez reached a cooperation agreement with prosecutors in September. In exchange for his testimony, the state dropped charges of murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and firearms offenses. He pleaded guilty to 3 counts of assault and conspiracy and faces up to 10 years in prison at sentencing. The brothers looked at each other with little expression Thursday. The older Gonzalez kept his head down for portions of the testimony. Didi Gonzalez's testimony differed from that of Ricardo Vasquez last week. Vasquez told jurors that it was Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez who suggested, "Let's bang the party." Vasquez, too, told the police that Didi provided Castro with the dark hoodie and hat he wore during the attack. Angel Youngsif Valerio, he said, gave Castro a white shirt with red stripes to hide his face during the shooting. Didi told jurors Thursday that Castro got the dark North Face jacket, hat and shirt he wore from the floor of Vasquez's van. Assistant Attorney General James Baum showed Didi photos from his Facebook page showing him wearing a hat similar to the one Castro wore, and another of a North Face jacket. Didi said he didn't remember having such a hat until he saw the photo. The jacket he had sold. Gonzalez, who wore a plaid shirt, white pants, and work boots, acknowledged in response to questions from his brother's lawyer, Robert B. Mann, that he knew he faced 2 mandatory consecutive life sentences plus more than 100 years in prison if convicted of the crimes before entering the cooperation agreement. Mann led him through his juvenile criminal record that included possession of marijuana, obstruction, disorderly conduct, and discharging a firearm in a compact area, in this case the parking lot at Warwick Mall. "You understand fully how important it is to get breaks from the system," Mann said. "Yes," said Gonzalez, who was waived out of family court to be tried in connection with Aynis' murder. A cross-examination of Didi Gonzalez continues Friday before Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause.
Mentioned at the top of the newscast, Providence police are investigating the city's 15th homicide. Police are searching for suspects after a 19-year-old, Omar Polanco, was shot to death not far from his house. The Pinpoint News Tracker shows you where it happened on Sales Street in Providence. Eyewitness News reporter Catherine Sotnick has been working the story all day long and is in our newsroom now with the latest.
Well, Nika, Providence police confirm this victim was pronounced dead at the scene from an apparent gunshot wound.
Family and friends of the victim light candles on the very sidewalk where he was killed. 19-year-old Omar Polanco shot to death in a drive-by shooting early Saturday morning.
We heard it and we went to his mom's house and it was confirmed. His mom said, yeah, he got killed last night.
Now they're trying to make sense of it all.
Never looking to bother nobody, never looking to start no trouble with nobody. Always laughing, always had a smile on his face, always joking around. He just loved riding around in his car.
Police say the shooting happened right in front of 371 Sales Street in South Providence. It's right across from a park and a school. When rescue crews arrived, they say they found the victim shot, lying in front of the house. Family says he was shot while riding his bicycle with several other people. Polanco's cousin also spoke with us off camera.
He's a great person. I know everybody comes on the news saying that their loved ones is great and this and that. And no, my little cousin really about this life. And, you know, at the end of the day, I can't say no more.
And again, sadly, this is the 15th homicide of the year in Providence. Police say they continue to investigate. In the
New Providence, RI. Police are investigating the fatal shooting of a 19-year-old man in Providence. Officers responding to a report of a person shot found Omar Polanco lying in front of a Sales Street home with an apparent gunshot wound. Emergency workers pronounced the Providence resident dead at the scene. Polanco is the 15th murder victim in Providence this year. No one has been arrested and detectives are investigating the shooting. Police did not release additional information.
Omar's smart. Omar is capable of, he loves being educated. He really did. He really loved learning.
Me and Omar, I met Omar in middle school. Me and him, we pretty much grew up together. And then high school came and we really started growing up together. Every summer it was me and Omar. Through school we had internships at Johnson & Wales. We did a lot of stuff together, after school programs, just every day. Like, he was my best friend. We graduated and everybody kind of grew up. And now we're here, all 19, 20 years old, and
He really wanted to leave, and he wanted to make something better. He wanted to get through college. He was really motivated, but it was all about his timing and stuff. So he had a plan.
Me pay respects to my little brother. He really didn't mean none of this. This wasn't his life right there. I mean, most of us live this life, but this wasn't his life.
Omar was probably one of the smartest people. He got me through a lot of my school days. He helped me write my autobiography. He helped me get through middle school. He did some of my homework. We did projects together that we wouldn't have got through if it wasn't for him. Omar was so smart. He could name every player on every baseball team, basketball team, football team in the NFL. Like, this is how smart this kid was. He wanted to go for business. He wanted to do stuff in sports management. He just knew what he wanted to do. It's a great.
Gonzalez takes stand in murder trial. June 2, 2014, 6:16 p.m. by ABC 6 News by news staff. News at abc6.com. A man on trial in connection with the murder of a 12-year-old Providence girl took the stand in his own defense today. Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez told jurors he didn't realize his accused accomplice was armed until seconds before he jumped out of the van they were in and opened fire on a graduation party. 12-year-old Aynis Vargas was killed last June. Gonzalez is accused of conspiring with 4 other members of the Harriet Street gang in the deadly shooting. He's the only one so far to go to trial.
Morning, Mr. Gonzalez. Are you nervous?
Yes.
What's your date of birth?
9/23/90.
So how old are you?
23.
Where were you born?
Hartford, Connecticut.
Where did you grow up?
Providence, Rhode Island.
Is there a sign for these gangs?
Yes.
You show us what the sign is? And what is that a sign for?
Harriet. We got in the van there.
Who got in the van?
Angel came up running to the van and said, "Richie, can I come?" And he kind of thought about it, he didn't care. And he got in the car. At that point, he was over in the car.
How many people got in the van altogether?
5.
Who were they? At some point, did someone say, "Let's go to Hartford"?
After we was done looking around Hartford, we get to the stop sign. To the light. When we get to the light, Wakar was like, "Oh, let's go check Hartford." And when we get to the light, the cops is right across the street, 2 patrolmen, and Blaze says, "You don't be hot."
Are you sure they didn't do anything?
I'm sure.
Did you have a conversation with Blaze around this time before he jumps out of the car about how the gun works and what happened, what to do with the jams?
No.
Do you have any conversation with Blaze at all about the gun
No, because
and how it works?
I didn't even know he had a gun.
Well, you knew once you said let's find a party together.
Yes.
But did you have any conversation with him after that comment at any point before he jumps out of the car about the gun?
No.
Have you ever been a victim of anything that the Hartford gang has done to you?
No.
You're a member of H Block, correct?
Yes.
And you've been a member of Harriet Street H Block for quite some time, correct?
Yes.
Your brother Angel was in H Block in Harriet Street, correct?
No.
Your brother Dee was in H Block in Harriet Street, correct?
Yes.
Did you get your brother Dee into the gang?
No.
Answer your question.
Can you repeat that question?
On July 21st, 2012, there was a fight, a huge fight, at 18 Harriet Street, where you were living, correct?
What year?
2012.
I believe so.
Okay, you believe so? Well, that fight involved 25 to 30 people. Remember that?
You know what? Ladies and gentlemen.
Men not too fat to stop killing. Prosecutors say. Gang member charged in death of girl, 12. Share this article to Facebook. Share this article to Twitter. Email this article. Updated. 6:53 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, June 5, 2014. Providence. RI. Prosecutors showed jurors a dance video in an effort to debunk a gang member's argument that he was too fat to stop a friend from getting out of a van and firing the shots that killed a 12-year-old girl. The images of Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez's dance moves were part of closing arguments Wednesday in his murder conspiracy trial. Gonzalez has testified he couldn't move fast enough to prevent 22-year-old Brandon Castro from firing into a crowd at a graduation party last June 15. Prosecutors allege that Gonzalez, who weighed 570 pounds at the time, and 4 other gang members went to the Hartford housing project that night seeking revenge for the killing of a friend. Aynis Vargas Felix was shot to death. 3 women with her were wounded.
Local story, the fate of a man accused in connection with the killing of a 12-year-old girl named Aynis Vargas while she was at a party in Providence last year is expected to soon be in the hands of a jury. Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez, the only one of the 5 men charged in this case to go to trial. The other 4 have already pleaded guilty. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly working the story has the latest now from Superior Court in Providence.
A murder trial in a heartbreaking killing is now nearing its conclusion after several weeks of wrenching testimony.
Possibility of dying in jail.
Ricardo Vasquez is a convicted killer serving a life prison sentence. In exchange for not getting a double life sentence, he's now cooperating with prosecutors, testifying against a fellow gang member, 23-year-old Luis Gonzalez. Prosecutors say both men and 3 other men all are responsible for shooting and killing 12-year-old Aynis Vargas and for shooting and injuring 3 grown women. All 4 victims were at a graduation party in Providence last June when prosecutors say 5 gang members showed up bent on revenge on a rival gang who broke a car window. Prosecutors say the 5 gang members didn't even attack their rivals, who happened not to be there at the time. So instead, one of them randomly fired a gun and hit innocent people they never knew at the graduation party. Under cross-examination, Ricardo Vasquez told the jury his own baby daughter helped motivate him to cooperate with prosecutors, not just a lighter prison sentence.
If it would have happened to my daughter, I asked myself, what would I want to happen? And I would want full justice.
Closing arguments in this case are expected sometime today. We'll have the very latest starting on Eyewitness News live at 5. At Superior Court with the Providence Mobile Newsroom, Sean Daly.
Closing arguments delivered in murder trial of Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez, hide caption, Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez, by Katie Mulvaney, posted June 5, 2014 at 12:01 a.m. Providence. The jury heard closing arguments Wednesday in the murder trial of Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez, a Harriet Street gang member accused of plotting with others to open fire on a graduation party in Providence. The jury heard closing arguments Wednesday in the murder trial of Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez, a Harriet Street gang member accused of plotting with others to open fire on a graduation party in rival gang territory, killing a 12-year-old girl. Gonzalez, 23, is accused of conspiring with fellow Harriet Street, or H Block, gang members to fire into a party at the Hartford Park housing project in June 2013, in retaliation for the 2012 shooting death of their associate Omar Polanco. 6th grader Aynis Vargas was killed and 3 women were wounded in the shooting. Robert B. Mann, Gonzalez's lawyer, discounted the state's theory that the shooting came in retaliation for Polanco's death and was part of a long, brewing feud between H Block and the rival Hartford Soldiers. It's patently absurd to think it was a revenge killing, Mann said. This was a case that came about because Ricardo Vasquez had his window broken. Mann implored jurors not to believe Vasquez or Gonzalez's younger brother, Luis D. Gonzalez, both of whom reached cooperation agreements with the government in exchange for their testimony. He looked to admitted shooter Brandon Blaze Castro's statement to the police in which he described being drunk and high on drugs before having a mood switches before the killing. That's a X1B plus Lou and $, tick X1B plus going off on his own. Mann said, there was no plan to do anything other than break windows, but Assistant Attorney General James Baum argued it was about much more than that. H Block members, including Gonzalez, believed Hartford Soldiers had shot and killed their friend Polanco in the heart of Harriet Street territory. Here was a chance to do it right back, Baum said of the minivan loaded with the Gonzalezes. Vasquez, Castro, and Angel Youngsif Valerio, all H Block members, encountering the party as they searched for Hartford Soldiers just before midnight June 15. He looked at Vasquez's testimony that Gonzalez said, expletive that they didn't care about Omar, in response to concerns about women being at the party and the police nearby. Everyone in that van knew it was about Omar, Baum said. Baum asked the jury to question Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez's credibility. He challenged statements Gonzalez made downplaying his role in the gang and his knowledge of the Hartford Soldiers dispute. He dismissed that Gonzalez had failed to hear Castro tell the others he had a gun, as Vasquez and the younger Gonzalez testified to. Of course, he heard it. Everyone in that van heard it, Baum said. It was Gonzalez who instructed Castro how to use the gun and who then said, "If you're going to do it right," Baum said. It was now about they took one of ours. Now we're going to take one of yours, Baum said. Baum held up a photo of Aynis in completing his argument. She had no idea this was about Omar. The jury is expected to begin deliberations when the trial resumes Thursday before Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause.
Now the latest developments on the trial of one of the suspects charged with the murder of a 12-year-old girl. The jury in Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez's case deliberated for a second full day today without reaching a verdict. He's charged in connection with last year's shooting death of Aynis Vargas. Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly joins us now live outside Providence Superior Court.
Mike, after 2 days of deliberations, jurors still haven't reached a verdict in the murder trial of Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez. It's a chilling charge. Prosecutors say Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez is one of 5 men responsible for shooting and killing 12-year-old Aynis Vargas and for shooting and injuring 3 women. All 4 victims were at a graduation party in Providence last June when prosecutors say 5 gang members showed up bent on revenge against a rival gang. Instead, they say one of the 5 randomly fired a gun and hit innocent people they never even knew. 4 of the 5 gang members already have been convicted in the murder. Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez is the last of the 5 to face the charges. His lawyer, in closing arguments, painted a picture of a man unaware of what his fellow gang members were up to.
This wasn't a pre-planned trip to go out and shoot somebody. This wasn't a pre-planned trip to go out and murder somebody. They were going out to break windows.
But prosecutors argued Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez knew exactly what was happening.
These aren't the actions of someone who was surprised or just going for a ride or didn't know what bang the party was, didn't enter a conspiracy. These are the actions of a soldier.
Jurors will be back at it for day 3 of deliberations on Monday.
But we begin with the latest developments on a local murder trial. Just minutes ago, we learned the jury failed to reach a verdict in the case against the man accused of participating in the murder of a 12-year-old girl. Today was the 3rd day the jury failed to reach a decision.
Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez is charged with murder and several other crimes in the shooting death of Aynis Vargas. Eyewitness News reporter Susan Campbell's been on verdict watch all day and joins us live at Providence Superior Court with more on what took place today.
Shannon and Mike, around 2 o'clock this afternoon, the jury sent the judge a note saying they were deadlocked on some of the charges. The judge sent them back to deliberate, and about 2.5 hours later, they still weren't able to agree. So the judge sent them home for the day. Aynis Vargas was 12 years old when she was shot to death. It was last June during a graduation party on Hartford Avenue. 4 men, including the shooter Brandon Castro, have already pleaded guilty for their roles in the crime that killed Aynis and injured 3 other women. But this man, Luis Gonzalez, who also goes by Fatboy, decided to go to trial. After several days of testimony, the jury began deliberations on Thursday. This afternoon, they told the court they couldn't reach a decision on some of the charges. The judge read their note aloud to put it on the record.
We have reached a unanimous verdict on several of the counts. However, we are equally split on the remaining counts. I have little confidence that we will be able to come to a unanimous decision on the remaining charges.
Gonzalez testified he was in the van at the murder scene when Castro opened fire into a crowd of people, but Gonzalez told the court he didn't know Castro was armed. Prosecutors say that's not the case. In fact, Ricardo Vasquez, the man who admitted to driving the van to the shooting, testified that Gonzalez gave Castro the gun and showed him how to load it. The jury will be back at it again tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning. Of course, we will stay on top of it and bring you the latest as soon as a verdict comes in. Live with the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
Jury finds Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez not guilty of murder. June 10, 2014, 10:48 a.m. by ABC 6 News. By Dana Griffin, D. Griffin, at abc6.com. At Dana Griffin, Providence, RI 23-year-old Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez has been acquitted of murder. The family of murder victim, 12-year-old Aynis Vargas, left court today without saying a word. Those words, "not guilty," are very difficult for them to hear, but they're very respectful people and they respect the process, said Assistant Attorney General Stacey Veroni. The defense attorney expressed mixed feelings about the verdict. "We're relieved he was acquitted in the murder and obviously disappointed that he was convicted of the many other counts," said defense attorney Robert Mann. Gonzalez was found guilty on the 8 lesser charges, including assault with a dangerous weapon, conspiracy to commit AWD, and 4 felony gun charges. Combined, the charges carry a maximum sentence of life plus 130 years. Providence Public Safety Commissioner Stephen Paré said, "We are hoping that he'll go away for a long time, including the 4 other defendants." Gonzalez was accused of conspiring with 4 other members of the Harriet Street gang to shoot at a graduation party last June. Unauthorized.
But first, tonight's split verdict. The man on trial for participating in the murder of a 12-year-old girl was acquitted on 2 charges today, including first-degree murder. However, Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez was found guilty of 8 other charges, one of which carries a life sentence.
Today's verdict came down just before noon after the jury deliberated for more than 3 days. Let's get right to Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly at Superior Court in Providence with the latest developments.
Day 4 of deliberations lasted less than an hour before the jurors reached their verdicts.
Clerk will take the verdict.
The verdicts came early on day 4 of deliberations. Luis "Fatboy" Gonzalez gave no visible reaction.
Conspiracy to commit murder, guilty or not guilty? Not guilty. First-degree murder of Aynis Vargas, guilty or not guilty? Not guilty.
Not guilty of both murder and conspiracy to commit murder in the shooting death of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas almost exactly a year ago in Providence.
They are devastated. We just got off the phone with Aynis's mom. We're coming up on the anniversary of her death. Those words, not guilty, are very difficult for them to hear, but they are very respectful people and they respect the process.
But the jury found Luis Gonzalez guilty of all 8 lesser charges in connection with both the murder and the injuries of 3 women.
What did Mr. Gonzalez say?
I mean, I think it's sinking in. This has been a long process, okay? And I think when I said we are relieved, I think I was speaking for both of us, that we're relieved that he was acquitted of the murder and obviously disappointed that he was convicted of the many other counts.
Luis Gonzalez now faces a mandatory sentence of life in prison, plus a maximum of 130 years in prison.
He was found not guilty, unfortunately, on 2 of the counts. He was found guilty on 8 other accounts. So we're hoping that he goes away for a long time.
A sentencing date has not yet been set. Coming up new at 6, Attorney General Peter Kilmartin weighs in on how a long sentence would help the family.
Providence gang member sentenced in murder of 12-year-old girl, shooting of 3 women. Hide caption. Angel Valerio, 19, pleads guilty on charges he was involved in a shooting that killed Aynis Vargas, 12, last year. His attorney William Demetrius left. Freed Esquires, by Amanda Milkovitz, Journal staff writer follow, posted November 18, 2014 at 4:23 p.m. Providence. He didn't fire the gun, but a young man who was with a fellow gang member who murdered a 12-year-old girl and injured 3 women was sentenced Tuesday to 15 years for being involved. Providence. He didn't fire the gun, but a young man who was with a fellow gang member who murdered a 12-year-old girl and injured 3 women was sentenced Tuesday to 15 years for being involved. Angel Youngsif Valerio, now 20, was in a minivan with 4 other Harriet Street gang members the night of June 15, 2013, when they drove to the Hartford Park housing complex seeking retaliation over a broken van window and the murder of a friend. Valerio, who sat in the back row of the van, thought they were just going to fight their rivals, said his court-appointed lawyer William C. Dimitri. He didn't believe that Valerio knew that one of his friends had a gun. The Hartford Soldiers weren't out that night, just women and children at a high school graduation party. Yet, one of the gang members took the gun to the party and opened fire, killing 12-year-old Aynis Vargas and wounded Vilma Tineo, Elaine de Vargas, and Eugelin Cabrera Martinez. Facing sentencing before Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause, Valerio read a letter of apology to Aynis' family and the 3 women. When he'd gotten together with his friends that night, Valerio thought they were just going to hang out and smoke marijuana, he said in his statement to the court. The shooting was not part of the night's plan, he said. Valerio called the shooting inexcusable, and wrote that he was sorry for what happened and deeply sorry for the death of Aynis. Her life was just beginning, Valerio wrote in his letter. Dimitri said later that Aynis' family and the victims were there to hear Valerio's apology. None of Valerio's family or friends were there to see him. Valerio has had little support in his young life, Dimitri said. Valerio's father left when he was 6. His mother left when he was 13. He has 7 half-siblings, but none were part of his life, Dimitri said. Friends let Valerio stay at their homes, giving him a place to sleep, and he was also sent to group homes, Dimitri said. He eventually graduated from Central High School. But Valerio has been mainly on his own, Dimitri said. He became a product of his environment, Dimitri said later. Abandoned by his parents and turned to the streets, the gang became Valerio's family and the state prosecutor attacked the gang life as a destructive force. Assistant Attorney General James Baum urged the judge to issue a sentence that punished Valerio and deterred others from gang violence and retaliation, to further send a message that this is not a drama. It is not about posing and throwing hand signs or playing a vacuous game of respect reported in, and fueled by, social media or competing videos, Baum said, in a statement from the Attorney General's office. It's a blood sport that ends lives, the lives of those foolish enough to play along and the lives of those innocent enough just to live in a neighborhood or celebrate at a party on a warm summer night. All 5 of the young gang members out that night have been convicted for their roles in the shooting. The gunman, 22-year-old Brandon Castro, pleaded guilty in April to charges of murder, assault and conspiracy and is serving consecutive life sentences, plus 50 years. Ricardo Vasquez, 21, who drove the minivan to Hartford Park, pleaded guilty in September 2013 and is serving a life sentence. Luis Didi Gonzalez, 19, has pleaded guilty to assault and conspiracy charges, while his 24-year-old brother Luis Fatboy Gonzalez, who told Castro to bang the party, was found guilty by a jury in June of several assault and gun charges. Both are awaiting sentencing, under the terms of the plea agreement, which the Attorney General's office said was reached with victims' approval. Valerio pleaded guilty to 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon and 1 count of conspiracy to commit assault with a dangerous weapon. Judge Krause sentenced Valerio to 15 years, with 12 years to serve at the adult correctional institutions. 1 year for every year of Aynis' life. Her father, T.M.O. Vargas, gave a statement about losing an innocent, sweet and happy child. Justice was now being served, he said. When a person takes a life away by accident, that person has to pay. But if it was done intentionally, the price to pay is higher, Vargas said in his statement. Sometimes people are given an opportunity to change, but in the majority of the time they are not in the disposition to change for better, Vargas added, and they continue to drag malice in their mind.
Sentencing this morning, 12-year-old Aynis Vargas was killed at a graduation party in Providence last year, the innocent victim of gang violence. This morning, another of the defendants in the case was sentenced. NBC 10's Susie Steimel is outside the courthouse in Providence now with the story. Susie?
Well, Frank, the 3rd defendant to be sentenced in this case is Angel Valerio. We just stepped out of that sentencing. He was not the one who pulled the trigger that day, but he was in the car when his friends shot up that graduation party last summer, killing 12-year-old Aynis Vargas. Now he will serve 12 years in prison, which is just 1 year less than what the state originally asked for.
You are more than just a young miscreant. You're a young thug.
Judge Robert Krause calls gang violence, quote, the bane of civilized society, as he sentences 20-year-old Angel Valerio to 12 years in prison for weapons charges related to the murder of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas.
The shooting and what led up to it was and is inexcusable. There is nothing I can say that would justify what happened that night.
Valerio is a member of the Harriet Street gang who fired shots into a graduation party in Providence in June of 2013. The shots killed Aynis Vargas and injured 3 other women.
I just want to take this chance to say I'm sorry for what happened. I'm sorry for my involvement with those events, and I'm deeply sorry for the loss of an innocent 12-year-old girl.
Angel Valerio, aka Young Sif, avoided murder charges by testifying against a member of his own crew this past summer. That was Luis, aka Fatboy Gonzalez. Gonzalez now faces life in prison plus 130 years. The trigger man, Brandon Castro, pleaded guilty and is serving 2 life sentences plus 50 years. Ricardo Vasquez is serving 1 life sentence. And the younger Luis Gonzalez, a.k.a. Didi, is also awaiting sentencing. He, too, testified against Fatboy, so the state lessened his potential prison time to 10 years.
Now, I did catch up with Aynis Vargas' father outside of court. He said he didn't want to go on camera, but he did mention that he believes justice has been done in this case. Next up, the fourth of the 5 defendants to be sentenced is Luis, a.k.a. Didi Gonzalez, and he will be appearing in court on December 10th. Live in Providence, Susie Steimel, NBC 10 News.
Gang member sentenced to 30 years in killing of Aynis Vargas, 12. Hide caption. Sheriffs handcuff Luis Fatboy Gonzalez after his sentencing in Superior Court Friday for the murder of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas and the shooting of 3 others.
Well, we begin tonight with developing news out of Providence, where this afternoon, one of 5 suspects convicted in connection with the tragic shooting death of a 12-year-old girl broke down in tears as he learned his punishment.
Eyewitness News reporter Sean Daly joins us live now from Superior Court with the Providence Mobile Newsroom.
It was a heartbreaking afternoon here at Superior Court in Providence. The father of a murder victim spoke out against the culture of street gangs.
Does your client desire to make any comment for the record?
After wiping away tears from his eyes and in a low voice that was hard to hear, Luis Fatboy Gonzalez stood and apologized for his role in the murder of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas. Prosecutors say he was not the shooter, but he was convicted of lesser charges in connection with the murder. In a sentencing agreement, Judge Robert Krause sentenced Luis Gonzalez to serve 30 years in prison. A prosecutor read an emotional statement from the father of the murder victim.
People say that gangs are a family that doesn't provide anything at all, a family that doesn't provide anything positive, doesn't deserve to be called a family.
It was at a graduation party on Father's Day in the Hartford Park housing development in Providence in June of last year. Prosecutors say 5 gang members drove by bent on revenge against rival gang members. But when it turned out their rivals weren't there, the shooter fired a gun into the crowded party anyway, killing Aynis Vargas.
Let's bang the party? Really?
Absolutely senseless violence. That's what this case was about, senseless violence. Truly innocent victims, not rival gang members, good people having a celebration.
The other 4 gang members also have been convicted of various charges in the murder. A prosecutor talks about what that fact means new at 6. Live at Superior Court with the Providence Mobile Newsroom. Sean.
Providence. A judge on Friday sentenced Harriet Street gang member Luis Fatboy Gonzalez to serve 30 years in prison for his role in the murder of a 12-year-old girl and the shooting of 3 others. Providence. A judge on Friday sentenced Harriet Street gang member Luis Fatboy Gonzalez to serve 30 years in prison for his role in the murder of a 12-year-old girl and the shooting of 3 others attending a Hartford Park party in June 2013. The heavyset Gonzalez wept as he addressed Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause's courtroom. "I stand here today with a heart full of sadness and regret and feeling as though I deserve the punishment I've been given," he said, wearing khaki pants, a gray-collared shirt and white sneakers. He was ashamed of his bad choices, he said as subs sounded in the courtroom. He prayed the family of 6th grader Aynis Vargas and the 3 women injured in the shooting would accept his apology. Assistant Attorney General James Baum read a letter on behalf of TMO Vargas, Aynis' father. "People say that gangs are a family that doesn't provide anything positive doesn't deserve to be called a family," Baum said as Vargas stood by his side. Gonzalez was the only Harriet Street, or H Block, gang member involved in the shooting to go to trial. 4 others, including his younger brother, Luis Didi Gonzalez, pleaded guilty to various crimes. Over 3 weeks in June, jurors heard about a city inhabited by gangs that speak street code, use hand gestures and perpetuate long, festering feuds marked by shootouts, fights and stabbings. Witnesses told of a violent feud between H Block and the Hartford Soldiers, based in Hartford Park. The friction was driven, in part, by the unsolved 2012 shooting death of H Block associate Omar Polanco. It's that death the group was seeking retribution for the night of the shooting, co-conspirator Ricardo Vasquez described driving his minivan to a park at Harriet and Sales Streets, which served as the H Block base, June 15, 2013. A fast-moving Pathfinder swerved at them. Vasquez followed the car and was blocked in at a stoplight. Young men jumped out of vehicles screaming Hartford and smashed the rear window of his minivan. Vasquez, Fatboy Gonzalez, his brother Didi Gonzalez and 2 others decided just before midnight to see if they could find the cars. The group, some of whom split a gallon of Hennessy cognac and smoked marijuana, spotted a party outside Hartford Park. Vasquez said Fat Boy Gonzalez suggested they bang the party. Admitted shooter Brandon Blaze Castro put on a dark hoodie and hid his face in white-collared shirt during the shooting. Gonzalez told jurors he didn't realize Castro was armed until just before the shooting. He said he was too slow to stop Castro because he weighed 568 pounds at the time. The jury acquitted Gonzalez of murder and conspiracy charges related to Aynis' death. He was convicted of 8 other charges, including conspiracy to commit assault with a dangerous weapon and 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon for the shooting of 3 women: Vilma Tineo, Elaine de Vargas, and Eugелin Cabrera Martinez. In addition, the panel found Gonzalez guilty of discharging a firearm while committing a crime of violence that ended in death and 3 counts of discharging a firearm while committing a crime of violence resulting in injury. Under the sentence, Gonzalez, 24, received 30 years to serve for the 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon for the women's shootings. He received a 20-year suspended sentence with probation for 3 counts of discharging a firearm while committing a crime of violence resulting in injury. That term will run consecutively to his prison time. If he is found to violate his probation terms, he would serve the remainder of the suspended sentence in prison without the possibility of parole. According to the agreement reached between prosecutors and Gonzalez's lawyer, Robert B. Mann, Assistant Attorneys General Bauma and Stacey Vironi agreed Friday to dismiss the gun charge related to Vargas' death, which could have called for a consecutive life term. In exchange, Gonzalez agreed not seek any reduction of his sentence at a later date. The gunman Castro, 22, previously admitted to charges of murder, assault, and conspiracy and is serving consecutive life sentences, plus 50 years. Vasquez, 21, pleaded guilty soon after his arrest and is serving a life sentence. Krause last month sentenced Angel Valerio, 20, to 15 years, with 12 to serve, for 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon and 1 count of conspiracy. Luis Didi Gonzalez, 19, who somewhat reluctantly testified at his brother's trial, admitted to assault and conspiracy charges and awaits sentencing next month, Baum said following Friday's sentencing, which Attorney General Peter F. Kilmartin attended, that the case had prompted an even closer partnership with Providence Police and the Attorney General's office to stop gang violence. The community's fed up with it, Baum said. Final Harriet Street gang member sentenced in 2013 murder of 12-year-old girl. By Katie Mulvaney posted January 16, 2015 at 9:58 p.m. Luis Didi Gonzalez is sentenced before Judge Robert D. Krause, the last defendant to be sentenced in the Aynis Vargas Hartford Park shooting, Providence. The final Harriet Street gang member linked to the 2013 murder of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas was sentenced Friday to serve 7 years in prison for his role in the shooting that led to her death. Providence, R.I. The final Harriet Street gang member linked to the 2013 murder of 12-year-old Aynis Vargas was sentenced Friday to serve 7.5 years in prison for his role in the shooting that led to her death. Superior Court Judge Robert D. Krause sentenced Luis Didi Gonzalez, 19, to 13 years, with 7.5 to serve, for his participation in the shooting up of a party outside the Hartford Park housing complex. Gonzalez was among 5 associates of the Harriet Street gang seeking revenge that night against the rival Hartford Soldiers, with whom they had feuded for years. Gonzalez, who was not the shooter, had faced up to 10 years to serve in prison under a deal reached with prosecutors in exchange for his testimony against his older brother, Luis "Fat Boy" Gonzalez. He pleaded guilty to 3 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon for the shooting of 3 women at the party and 1 of conspiracy under the agreement. Murder and firearms charges were dismissed. Krause faulted the younger Gonzalez Friday for not offering completely candid testimony at trial, instead sidestepping the truth to protect his brother. He also withheld that he provided the gunman with a hat. "I don't believe for 1 minute that you didn't hear it," Krause said of the elder Gonzalez's exclamation just before the shooting. "Let's bang the party." TMO Vargas, Aynis's father, informed the court before sentencing that his daughter would have celebrated her 14th birthday this Tuesday. "I am here to represent her. I am here to seek justice for her," Vargas said. Near tears, he thanked Special Assistant Attorney General James Baum for his dedication. "When I met him, I asked him to represent my daughter," Gonzalez, too, addressed the court. "I am so sorry what happened on that dreadful night," said Gonzalez, wearing a red polo pullover, black skinny jeans and white sneakers, his hair in an afro. "I regret ever getting in that van," he said. As a father of a daughter and brother to a sister Aynis' age, he said he was terribly sorry. Fat Boy Gonzalez was the only Harriet Street, or H Block, gang member involved in the shooting to go to trial. 4 others pleaded guilty to various crimes. Over 3 weeks in June, jurors heard about a city inhabited by gangs that speak street code, use hand gestures, and perpetuate long festering feuds marked by shootouts, fights, and stab